This episode is brought to you by Santos Threads. Make sure to visit Santos-Threads for the latest and greatest in men's and women's Latino urban-inspired streetwear. Visit SANTOS-THREADS.com. Hey, you are now listening to the Santos Says podcast, episode number 48. Back with you guys once again, and first of all, I am thrilled for the guest I have on here. But before anything, make sure you guys follow me on Instagram, Santos Thread Shop, as well as on TikTok, Santos Thread Shop. And as always, every episode is sponsored by Santos-Threads.com. Again, so welcome once more with me. I am very excited for this guest I have. This guest was gracious enough to join me, and I'm very excited to have her on. She is a director. She is an actor, a writer. I mean, she wears a lot of hats. She's an entrepreneur. She's a Latina, a Boricua like myself from Brooklyn, New York. Her name is Elaine del Valle. I have her here because I stumbled across her profile on social media. So I was on Instagram and I saw some of the projects she worked on, and I was just blown away with not only the talent, but just the way that she seemed to have a message. She was really transparent as far as how she wanted to put out inspiration from her life. She didn't know me from a hole in the wall, but I saw her and I respected her work, and it resonated with me. And I said, you know what? I would love to have an opportunity to have her on. And she was gracious enough to join me and have her on here. And we're going to talk about her as far as her projects, her life. We're not gonna get too crazy deep into the woods with that, but I really, more than anything, I want to talk about some of the inspiration behind what she's done. I mean, she's an award-winning writer, director. She's had off-Broadway work. She's written a book, the whole thing, and I'll let her tell it without further ado. I want to welcome here to the Santos Says podcast, Elaine del Valle.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much.
So what can I tell you? The inspiration behind the work. I guess I began my career as an actor, and I became very frustrated at the lack of roles that were available for Latinas. And even back then, there were groups of Latino actors that would talk about the failure of entertainment to tell authentic stories when it came to representing Latinx talent. And so it just really resonated with me, and I understood very clearly that what part can you play if the people writing it don't really understand it? So you're always going to be playing a trope. You're always going to be playing someone else's idea of you unless you really take control and control the narrative. And so that's what I started doing. I started writing, and the first thing that I ever wrote was came out to be an award-winning one-woman show called Brownsville Bred. And it just really spoke of my true coming-of-age story out of Brownsville, Brooklyn. And it really resonated with audiences in ways that I did not anticipate. I thought people like me might get it, but I didn't understand that so many people would be, first of all, the people that were like me were so thirsty for the work. Like they just wanted more and more. They just ate it up and spread the word. So they really built my audience. But then beyond them, I came to understand that audiences from all walks of life really were resonating with just the very specific story because the themes were universal. And so it taught me a lot about the power of storytelling. And I just wanted to continue that and do more storytelling that expanded the platform that I was on, which was at the time it was just stage. But I really wanted to be able to create more content that was for the masses. And so that's how I began making stuff for screen. And really, that's become my passion, is directing for screen, writing for screen. I just love it.
It's amazing. I got to tell you, it's amazing because I saw It's funny. I heard of the story, but I never really paid a mind to it because I didn't. We're always busy in our everyday lives, and so I've heard of the story. I've heard of your story. I didn't know it was you who was behind it, and I didn't realize that it was your own personal story behind it. So then I went back. I started to peel back the layers, if you will, to try to kind of find out what the basis of it, knowing that it was finding out later on that it was your life, it was based on your life. And I saw that it hit me. First of all, full disclosure, I used to live out there. So I'm speaking from, it hit home to me. Like the
What you're saying is
stereotypical
Brownsville.
Brownsville. Yeah.
The play and the film that we're all talking about right now is actually Brownsville Bred.
Bread.
I've
Yes.
done other works as well, but this is what I'm sure you're referring to.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, just to be up for the audience, just to be clear. Yes. So Brownsville Bred was how and if you want, you could also talk about some of the other works as well. But I know that right now, Brownsville Bred is almost like it's your baby and that it's so authentic, right? It comes from you, and it's something that I obviously you're looking to take that to another level as well. With obviously you had the book, you had the play, off Broadway play, and now you have that. That's your story.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, with Brownsville Bred, luckily I waited this long to make it in film because I'm a much better filmmaker than when I first started making films. My first foray into film work was actually with a web series that I co-created and wrote and directed called Reasons Why I'm Single that I put on Amazon Prime. And I just wanted to create content and that I actually was in that content as well, right? Because remember, I started out as an actor, and I loved doing it, and people were loving the work, and I was really getting into production, and everybody started recognizing the quality of production that I was putting out. Like I certainly wasn't perfect. Now I look back at it like, oh no, but it was definitely for a web series. It was pretty good back then. It was like 2000 and I want to say 2010. So I was really at the forefront of that. And then I had done a panel with Rashad Ernesto Green, who's a really big director, and I really admired him. And I asked him for advice. Like I told him, like I really want to direct. Like I'm loving it so much. And he said to me, if you want to direct, Elaine, stop with the web series, which by then I had like 6 episodes. He said, stop doing the web series and really focus on film and make short films to practice. And so I started making short films. My first one was Final Decision that I was also in. But then the deeper I got into like directing, like the more I just wanted to be behind the camera at all times, like really focused on the monitor so I could see what was happening and know whether or not I got it the way that I wanted it. And my work just continued to improve through the practice of directing. And finally, I was ready to move past making short films. My last 2 short films were in really great festivals, Oscar qualifying festivals, really top tier, and they both my last two both they were called Me 3.769 and Princess Cut. They both got a license deal with HBO. So
Wow.
yeah,
Congratulations.
it was a big coup for me because I had produced a bunch of stuff that made it on for other people, and finally for me as a director telling stories that I wanted to tell to get on there, that was really a moment that I just I felt it, like I felt like this is where I want to land, this is what I want to keep doing. And then finally I'm ready to tell Brownsville Bred in this way, in this form, on this platform for screen, so that to share the story. And so that's what I've been doing, and I continue to do it actually because the work that you had seen. What I did was I just made the first act of Brownsville Bred because as an indie filmmaker, you got to afford the filmmaking, you got to pay
Right.
people, you got to
Right.
pay actors, and it's certainly not for the faint of heart. But I always save some money. I also raised some money through a fiscal sponsorship with Fractured Atlas that allows Fractured Atlas. And let me just say this about about the organization. It's a 501c3 charity that any artist can sign up for, or they can at least apply for. And if they're accepted, that makes the artist or the project able to get tax deductible donations from donors. So with Fractured Atlas, which is still an ongoing campaign that I have, I'm allowed to accept donations, and those donations are tax deductible for the people making the donations to help me make Brownsville Bred. So with a grant from Warner Media 150, a grant from Sundance Institute, the fiscal sponsorship, and some personal savings, I put that all together. I made the first act of Brownsville Bred, which I see it as a full-length feature film, my first as a director. And that's what really every director needs to get to in order to, continue to grow and be seen and be hired for other things. Because ultimately, I want to be directing for episodic television and feature films. But in order to do that, you really have to go past the short film stage and really start directing for feature in order for people to understand that you're capable of doing that.
Yeah, and it's funny. There's so much that goes into it that the average person doesn't know. Obviously, myself as well, right? And I'm watching it play out, and I seeing your mission and seeing what you're up to. It's fascinating to see the thought process, to see how you're doing that, and now you have your goal set towards that. Now, one of my questions for you is, now, do you have a time? Like, do you have a time frame where you're saying, okay, if I can't get it done by this set year, this set time and date, what would be next? Or do you feel like this is going to happen?
Can't, right? That should be taken out of everybody's vocabulary. Can't
Agreed.
Is not an option. I'm actually looking at the script now. I do have a certain amount of money in the bank, like ready to go in the next phase. But because the next phase involves 4 times the amount of work that I did in the first phase, I need 4 times the amount of money. Right now, I just have 1.5 times the amount of money. So I'm definitely still, meeting with people to try to raise that money, but and meaningful partners. And it does feel good. Like, I definitely have more money than I had. And I have, of course, my personal savings that I'm willing to, put right there. But it's so far, I don't have enough to finish the whole. And in the first part of Brownsville Bred, if you think about like Moonlight, you see the character in 3 different ages.
Yes.
So what I did with the first act is I filmed out the first age, which is 8 years old. So I filmed out the 8-year-old, and now the next part, and for the bulk of the film, it's really a teenager version of that 8-year-old. So what I'm doing is I am moving forward with my team as if I have all of the money.
Okay.
Not in a really like rush pace like we do like right before we start principal for photography, which is like pedal to the metal in the last 4 weeks, but in a way that is comfortable. So like right now I'm casting for the actors that we'll have in Puerto Rico. So we want them to be all Puerto Rico local hires because that's where the film will travel to. And I could afford to bring my 2 leads, the daughter and father roles, but I can't afford to bring everybody else, right? So I'm just going to bring director, assistant director, a couple of producers, my, just like the core team, my cinematographer, take out an Airbnb. So like, I'm thinking along these ways right now, how we can use that Airbnb to maybe also be one of our locations, and we've teamed up with a Puerto Rico producer as well, who is now scouting for us, getting us some location options that might be available to us for free or very little. And, people who really just believe in the value of the work. So we're moving forward in these ways. Also, I'm shot listing. And so you say, like, what if I can't? Which I hate that word. So, but
I have to ask. I know that you're not going to quit on it, but I just
no.
Hypothetical. I'm just.
I have to finish. No, that's not even a word. But what will happen if the amount of money that I need to finish the whole doesn't happen right away? What I'm working on right now is I'm actually shot listing and scheduling. And in that very meticulous work, I am looking for places in the script where I can add another age, where she can jump again. Now, that's not
Okay.
ideal. I don't want that, because what I want to do is get investors involved and then be able to pay them back really quickly. I mean, not really quickly, but
In a
relatively
timely
quickly,
fashion.
compared to like other films. You make them, you have this amount of time in post production, and then they're out.
Yeah.
But something that I also have been doing with what we have already accomplished is I put it out on the festival circuit in the episodic category. So actually, we're in two categories. We're in a short film category whenever an episodic category wasn't available, like we just did for Holly Shorts. But we're in the episodic category wherever it is available, unless those episodes are only web series. So, but in March, we actually premiered our first act at South by Southwest, which is one of the biggest film festivals in the world, and really was for me like where I would have wanted to premiere. That's where we premiered, and we actually won an audience award. And we got to meet the programmers that were just so supportive. And when I said to them during the talk back, like, this is a feature film, it's just the first act, they said back to me, we look forward to having the feature film here premiere. Like I know it's
Wow.
not guaranteed, but that's exactly what my intention was, to create this boost for it, to put it in a position where it could possibly thrive in a place like this as a feature film as well. Not to say that we wouldn't be there with sales agents and possibly even have pre-sales before that. But that's just, if I have to go completely indie, that I think is setting us up for some real victories moving forward, or at least positioning us in a way that is really a valiant way to go compared to
Right.
it's a head start compared to where we could be, because a lot of films start off as shorts, and then they end up as feature films. So that's kind of what I was hoping and thinking, and that is what is coming to fruition.
And I love that, the fact that you're taking on that. You see, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is a lot of people say they want to get into the arts, they want to be actors, right? They want to be actors, but there is so much power behind the camera, not only because of the ability to create, but what you're able to do as well with your influence. And what I mean by that is, talk to me about the sense of responsibility you feel getting, obviously you're getting your feet wet now. You, as a director, the sense of responsibility, you're casting in Puerto Rico, you're going to cast locals, which I know people say it's easy to do because it's cheaper, right?
No, it's
Travel
also
expenses, but
authentic to it, right? Like,
right.
it's authentic, and the family is like in the story. Elaine actually, who's a girl from Brownsville, Brooklyn. Most of it is shot in Brooklyn and in Brownsville, and she actually goes to Puerto Rico to visit her dad, and so having people there that are authentically from Puerto Rico, in their environments, that's really important to me too. I mean, authenticity is important. And when you say responsibility, um, yeah, I think all filmmakers have a responsibility to at least the themes that they want to put out there. Their core beliefs. I think they have the responsibility to themselves, and if they are someone who is of color, I think that they also have a unique responsibility to represent in ways that other people just don't represent them, or sometimes they even overthink it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's definitely, I think about authenticity a lot, but it's funny, when you're a Latina filmmaker, what happens is that you're often being critiqued by people who are not Latina, and all of a sudden they have what to
Hmm.
say about the way that you're representing, and I'm like, no, you don't get to do that to me. I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
I'm sorry, but especially with my family, like, you don't get to tell me what my father should be or look like. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So it's yeah, it's a responsibility. I don't know what to say about that.
No, I hear you. And talk to me about that pushback that you might have gotten. Like, what? how often or how frequent has that occurred where you've seen people who don't know about our culture, don't know about any of us or anything, and they kind of give you pushback or they kind of give you resistance for certain things? Talk to me about that, those experiences.
Well, I mean, there's so many experiences that I could lean into on that, right? Like even if I'm once I was directing this commercial and it was all a Latinx cast and it was all generations, but of course we cast it with actors. We didn't care where they came from. Whoever was the best actor for the role, and they were all bilingual and they were all representing. And there was a word that we needed to use, and I was like, okay, what word would you use for this? What word would you use for this? Like there was a word we had to say closet, right, in Spanish, and I was like, okay, you tell me, like, so the grandmother said one thing, the daughter said another thing, I said one thing, the boy said another thing, and we landed on one thing. And then I went to like production and I was like, okay, so we're all agreeing that the word is such and such. And they were like, and I said, but all of us are Latino, right? Like we could say this. Calm
Right, right,
down. So
right.
it was like for me, where it was just like we're good. We could say this. There's nothing wrong here. We don't have to tiptoe around each other the way that other cultures, I feel, have to tiptoe around trying to get their point because they need it to be authentic. It's like this is what's authentic. Like this is
Right,
what's real.
right.
So I mean, that's one thing. But then, like in my story in particular, right? I mean, Brownsville Bred, and if you've read the book is out there. There's an Audible. It's adapted from my one woman stage play that was off Broadway. So it's been written about quite a bit. New York Times wrote about it, from girlhood trials to onstage triumph. Um, Post said you'll eat up sweet bread. Like I got some amazing reviews, and some of the critics would say like, talk about the fabric of the story, which is a daughter and her dad. And my dad was this amazing, amazing musician, solid, swagger, lovable. Everybody loved him, struggling with addiction. And so some people who are of our culture or not of our culture want me to tame that,
Mm-mm.
but
That was the
why?
reality.
Because right, so it's a reality. I feel like as long as I'm able to represent all sides and show that person as someone that you want to root for, then I think it's going to be okay. Like
Yep.
so this is sometimes, and I could see why, but sometimes I could see why somebody could say something like that, but they haven't seen the end of the story. At the end, that's just the first act that we discover that, and we understand that it's definitely traumatizing to the child. And later on in the story, Manny heals from his addiction, and Elaine is able to bring down her walls, the walls that she put up when she couldn't trust him again. And really, it's about just self-discovery, right? Because as we come of age, we just want to know who we are and find out who we are. And then what happens when you have this big existential question of nature versus nurture? And
Yes.
both of them have their things that society doesn't like about them. So all of a sudden you have, like, you're from the poorest crime-ridden neighborhood in New York. All of their judgments, misconceptions and preconceptions that happen because of that. And then also, you're from a broken home, parent with addiction, not educated. So then there are all these preconceptions that come with that. So you as a child are working through that. So those are really, it's a universal question, right? Nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
What makes us who we are? And so that's what Brownsville Bred is about. So even though it's a Latina girl and her dad and her parents living in a black neighborhood, and even though all of that urban American and Latinx experience is there, it's the core of the story is that, and that's why I find that audiences find it so relatable. All audiences.
Yeah, what I definitely, and one of the things I like about it is what you just said, is just keeping that authenticity, because there is going to be pushback with that, especially from the the Latino community, because it's going to say, wait a second, why are you portraying us in this light, right? And then you're like, wait a second, I'm not portraying us in this light. I'm telling the whole story.
Yeah.
And
And
right?
it's really a beautiful story. So I think people by the end of the story, just like in the play, I feel like Latinos felt very proud and they felt recognized and validated. And I think I dignify marginalized voices, and I don't write evil characters. I might write characters based on people that I know that some might see as evil, but I always have that other side of them that is just the opposite of that, because we're all human just trying to do the best that we can.
Absolutely. So while you were growing up, who were some of your influences that made you want to choose this direction, or if any?
No, I can't say that I had influences when I was younger choosing this direction. I mean, now you're making me think about that. Other than like teachers and stuff like that, I mean,
I mean, anyone, it takes only one person to spark. It doesn't necessarily have to be of the same um, career field, right? I mean, you can have
yeah.
all kinds of people who can spark.
Well, it's funny
Uh,
because this week I was talking with Edwin Vasquez, who's the gentleman who's the musical director of Brownsville Bred. He actually gave us some of his original music. He's an amazing musician. And I was in my car, and my mother came in, and he said, "Senora, I want to ask you a question. Like, where did Elaine get this from?" And I'm going to answer you with this because it was surprising to me too. And she said, "Elaine was always a dreamer." Elaine was always a dreamer. And it's true. Like when I was younger, I used to um, hang out on my window a lot, and I used to like look at the people who from the 12th floor were like this little, and I would like envision them and like be like, okay, if I could just get them over here, and I would create scenes in my head like that. And even like when I would take a bath, I would like read the back of a shampoo bottle as if I was like a spokesperson for it. So these were all things that I just used to do. I loved singing. I was always the creative. I was always like, I never took singing, but I love singing. I never took dancing, but I would like dance like and take up the whole floor of the living room, like and like do a show of it. But that was always like who I was, and I guess that's just innate in me.
I mean, that's amazing just to see that, because you are a role model. I mean, you are someone. I mean, even myself, I never wanted to be in movies or anything like that. But I mean, I felt really inspired when I saw and heard your story, um, and I was very proud to see that someone who similar background. It's like, wow, like look where she is, look what she's doing now, and it was really impactful, at least for me.
Thank you so much. I don't really like that title of role model, honestly, because there's so many amazing people out there that can be role models. I think that if anything, I'm just proving that it can be done by anyone with the desire and the commitment to do it, and the commitment to grow and to learn. So yeah, I'd rather, it's a see it be it thing, but I want to encourage young people to do it and not just young people, anybody, right? Because I'm not young, but anybody to do it. But I really, because places like Brownsville that are underserved, and especially in the arts, I feel like the belief that someone, or the mystery of the whole thing, right? Like I want to demystify this for everybody so that they can know, like, this is something that you can go into. It's not just like, oh, and not to say that people don't like dream, like they have like, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, but never is it told them like you could be a director, especially girls, right? Like you can create films and stories and direct them. Like that's something very rare that people say to them. So I truly believe that you have to, you know, dream it to start acting on it and believe it and then do it. Like you just have to have it something that you feel is tangible. And so I don't feel that a lot of people who are Latino, poor, or growing up in neighborhoods like Brownsville, get that a lot in their lives. Get like, yeah, you can do that. That you can do. And it's a very, like they pinpoint it and say you can do that. And I feel like being a filmmaker is such an important job. I feel like the fact that you're able to um, put a core belief and make it palatable on screen to people that don't want to digest that, but you bring it to them in a way that is digestible. I feel like you have the power to influence and provoke thought and questions, and I think that that's such an important job in the world.
Yeah, 100%. And that actually goes along with the question I was going to ask you about, which is the quote unquote gatekeeper, right? Do you believe that the quote unquote gatekeeper in this industry exists? That's one. And two, if so, do you feel that your position where you are and where you're headed to is going to be able to help kind of mitigate some of that?
Do I believe that gatekeepers exist? That's the
In
first
this
part?
in this industry, is there such thing
Yeah.
as a quote unquote gatekeeper?
Yes. Yes. There are gatekeepers. Namely, I would say like the Directors Guild of America. That's a gatekeeper, right? Because
Yeah.
like I want to direct for episodic television, and for the most part, you can't direct for episodic television unless you're in the DGA. So that's a
Mm.
union, but you can't be in the DGA unless you've directed for episodic television
Oh,
or something else that's union. So it's really a catch-22, and it exists for the actors as well. But for directors, it's even more that you have to achieve in order to let me just cut this out. In order to get there. So there are lots of gatekeepers. There are a lot of programs now that have been created to actually help the filmmaker, right? Like there's the Ryan Murphy Half Initiative or the CBS Directors
yes.
Diversity Program, the HBO Diversity Program, the Sony Directors Diversity Program. All of these have very limited amounts. Like they can only take a certain amount of students, and so the competition is now fierce to get into them. And then there's also like they're created to help diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So if you're helping a Latino, a woman, okay, good. Now, do you have any disabilities? Do you are you queer? Are you
Right. Right.
it's like
Right.
now they want to and certainly it's
I
all
get. Yep.
talent as well, but they really want to check a lot of boxes in that. And I feel like it's getting harder and harder, and it's certainly they also want to ROI, return of investment, that is usually had in younger people than I am. And they also as they should really respect the education, the formal educations, which is amazing, but I didn't go to UCLA, I didn't go to USC, I didn't go to NYU, I didn't do any of that stuff. I really studied acting as my career. So I learned a lot about acting in a professional studies way. I studied at Carnegie Hall, but then when I started making films, I just started making films, and I learned sort of from in front of the camera. I learned behind the camera, and then I deepened to learn more about directing as I started to care more and more about it. I take classes all the time. Starting on Friday, I'm taking a class that's a 4-day intensive. That's a blocking lab. That's all about being able to block on the fly. And it was recommended to me by the producing director that I had on Queens, who I said to, what else can I do? I shadowed her. I said, what else can I do? This one told me, read this book, read that book. I read everything. I take as much learning opportunity as I can. And but I feel like I'm coming from behind you know, from behind. I'm coming up from behind because I don't have the formal education that many others have, and that's great. Like I would want to choose them too, I guess. But I just have to keep working as an independent artist in order to to just keep going, right? Because you just have to keep going until they know that you're not going to go away. And
Right.
um, if they never accept you in, you have to keep going to a place where when you finally get in, you'll be in a position to let others in the way that you were.
And that's the thing that I love as well. And just like, that's what I like to see as far as just having that, not only representation, but just, as you said, the gatekeepers got their rules and all that stuff. But you want to get to the point where you can't be denied. And you're sharpening those skills right now.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
yeah,
it's happening. I think it happens more and more when you create your own work. So while I would just want to, I just love directing, and I would love people to be offering me stuff, and just be directing it. I find that I have to create my own stuff because that's the stuff that people don't have. That's what's lacking in the world. And so about a year and a half ago, I sold an original pilot to CBS, and working on another one now. I finally got an agent. Brownsville Bred, of course, is my original story. So I find like this is the only thing that they can't take away from me is my stories.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. So, all right. So before we go, just tell everyone, tell the audience I want you to plug everything right now as well, and just tell everyone what you have coming up. What's next for Elaine del Valle?
Well, what's next?
Well,
Well, I
in
can tell you
brief.
what's now. I can tell you what to do now if you want to like read my stuff. You can definitely read Brownsville Brook, Brownsville Bred the book, which is available on Amazon. It's $10. You could listen to it on Audible, which I also narrate in the way that I actually perform the one woman show. And follow me on Instagram at Elaine del Valle Director, so that you can be up on all of the things that whenever my screenings come to a neighborhood near you, which we will be having a Brownsville Bred premiere in New York coming up in the fall. So I'm not allowed to talk about that yet, just yet, but that will be available. And definitely, if you guys want to follow or donate or become an investor or know an investor, I'm definitely up to listen and to also pitch.
Absolutely, and we'll plug all the information as well. It'll be on the episodes caption and everything as well. So where they can donate and all that information to follow you as well. Um, so Elaine, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I love hearing your story, hearing you tell it, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you have next.
Yeah, you got to check it out. It's really, I'm blown away by it. I love it. And I don't say that easily because I'm like my worst critic. And you know, when I think about the future of it and watching like the auditions that I have going now with the teenage version and the lines being delivered, and I get to like hear that and feel that, it feels so good. It feels so good to know the kind of movie that I'm making, and I'm really proud of it. And I think that I think everybody can be.
Absolutely. I love it. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it take off, and it will take off. And at the obviously continue to evolve and etc. So looking forward to that. And I thank you for telling your story and joining me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye. Yeah, so that was so interesting, Elaine del Valle. Very, very fascinating story. I love that. Look, she's working, she's doing her thing, she's working, she's got so much going on. I was really proud to have her on here, really to hear her tell her story from her mouth, from her vantage point, and really, this is what it's all about, right? Just creating your own opportunities, creating your own lane. Really, just if you're aspiring for something, going for it. No one needs to tell you what you can do or what you can't do. um, Aspire for more, aspire to want to go do your thing, and no matter what, it doesn't matter what place you're starting at. What matters is if you have the ambition and you're willing to put in the work, obviously you will see the results and the fruits of your labor. And certainly she's doing that. Make sure you follow her on social media. Pick up the book, Brownsville Bred, and check her out on social media as well. On Instagram, she's got plenty of material there. You could see all the stuff that she's done. You can see also some of that first scene that she was talking about as far as for that movie that she's looking to have released, the full movie. And she's obviously working on that as well as a ton of other things. And so that was episode number 48. So I thank her once again for joining me. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like, subscribe, comment, and follow me as well. Social media, Santos Thread Shop at Instagram, as well as Santos Thread Shop, TikTok. And of course, as always, don't just say what you mean or mean what you say. Say it with your chest. Peace.